In your 70s, you start to notice something strange. The older you get, the more you begin to disappear, not physically, but in the eyes of the very people you once held in your arms. My name is Eunice Frost. I'm 68 years old, and I spent my life teaching kids how to read, write, and dream in a small elementary school in the town of Hayes. 37 years. That's how long I stood in front of a chalkboard with a smile, gently correcting spelling mistakes, and handing out gold stars like they were Olympic medals. I retired 5 years ago. My husband Lawrence passed away just months before I turned in my final attendance sheet. After he died, something shifted. Not just in the house, but in how my children looked at me. Their concern was no longer about my happiness. It became about whether I had taken my vitamins, whether I should be driving, or if I'd remembered to lock the door at night. They didn't see me anymore. Not really. But today was Aiden's birthday. My grandson, 14, a wiry, freckle-faced boy who reminded me so much of Lawrence when he was younger it almost hurt. The whole family was getting together the first time in months, and I wasn't going to miss it for the world. I slipped into my navy blue dress with a white collar. Classic. Clean. Lawrence used to call it my confident teacher look. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror, hair neatly tucked into a bun, wrinkles around my eyes a little deeper, but still that same determined spark staring back at me. My old Ford rattled a little as I drove through the suburbs of Hayes toward my eldest son Norris's house, a 2-story with a manicured lawn and a driveway full of shiny cars. I parked down the street, took the neatly wrapped gift from the passenger seat, a DIY remote-controlled airplane kit I thought Aiden might like, and climbed the porch steps. "Grandma's here," someone shouted. The front door opened, and there was Aiden, taller now, voice deeper, but with that unmistakable smile. He hugged me, but it was brief, like a quick handshake you'd give your math teacher. At 14, hugging grandma in front of your friends is practically a felony. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, handing him the gift. "Don't open it yet. Let it be a surprise." Inside, I was greeted by Norris, 46, always checking his watch, always halfway through some mental calculation. He works in insurance and sees life as a balance sheet. "You're half an hour late, Mom," he said, glancing at his Rolex. "We were about to start without you." There was traffic. I lied. In truth, I'd spent 20 minutes just standing in front of the closet debating what dress said. I still belong here. The house was picture perfect. Leather couches, crystal vases, abstract art in gold frames. It felt more like a showroom than a home. Audrey, Norris's wife, was the curator, an interior designer who used her family like props in a magazine spread. Then came Merle, my red-haired middle child, full of perfume and passion, hugging me like she was trying to squeeze out an apology for every wrong she'd ever made. "You look tired, Mom," she said before immediately critiquing my dress. And in the corner, I saw Quincy, my youngest, quiet, reserved. And next to him, his wife Shannon, all posture and precision, never once calling me Mom, just Eunice, like we were neighbors sharing a fence. Everyone was smiling. Everything looked normal. But something wasn't right. I could feel it in the air. I just didn't know yet how much that feeling would change everything by the end of the day. Inside the house, everything was polished. Not just the marble countertops or the gold-accented coasters Audrey had carefully placed on the glass table. No, it was the way people talked, smiled, moved, polished, controlled, and just a little too careful. Norris led me into the living room like I was a guest at a hotel, not his own mother. Music played softly from a wireless speaker. People were talking in clusters, sipping from tall glasses. Audrey floated around, checking trays and adjusting pillows that didn't need adjusting. Merle flitted over with her usual burst of energy, enveloping me in a cloud of floral perfume. "How are you, Mom? You look tired," she said, tilting her head like a therapist about to suggest yoga and essential oils. I'm fine. I smiled. Just a little tired from the drive. You really need to rest more. She sighed. And that dress may be something brighter next time? I have a few pieces that would be perfect on you. I glanced down at my navy blue dress with the white collar. The same one Lawrence used to call elegant. Classic never goes out of style. Unless, apparently, you're talking to Merle. Across the room, I spotted Quincy with his wife, Shannon. Quincy waved a gentle, apologetic kind of wave and walked over to give me a quick hug. Shannon didn't bother to stand. She just nodded and smiled politely, sipping from a glass of lemon water. Eunice, she said. Like I was a neighbor she barely remembered from book club. Never mom, never mother-in-law. Always Eunice, distant and formal. How are the girls? I asked, trying to keep the conversation warm. Tanner and Paisley are outside with the other kids, Quincy said. Tanner won the school's math competition last week. Paisley's struggling with English, Shannon added flatly. Her teacher says she's not trying hard enough. I'd be happy to help her, I offered gently. I've spent my life teaching reading. Maybe I could. We hired a tutor. Shannon cut in, smiling without warmth. Teaching methods have changed a lot since you were in the classroom, Eunice. The way she said it, Eunice, like my name alone, was a reminder of obsolescence. I felt a small sting, not because of what she said, but because, well, maybe she believed it, that I was some relic, a woman too out of touch to help her own granddaughter conjugate a verb. All around me, the party continued, but the air felt different, heavier. There was tension behind the smiles, quick glances between siblings, restless fingers. Merle kept fiddling with the bracelet on her wrist. Norris checked his phone so often it felt like he was waiting for a bomb to go off. Quincy looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Something was off. Then Audrey glided over to the table like a pageant queen with a platter of canapés. Eunice, she said with that tight-lipped smile. I hope you didn't bring a cake. I ordered a sugar-free, gluten-free, dye-free dessert. Kids eat far too much junk these days. I just brought a present for Aiden, I replied, trying to stay gracious. But I'm happy to help in the kitchen if you need it. Oh, don't worry, she said quickly. Everything's under control. And just like that, I was dismissed. I sat down on the edge of the couch next to Aiden. He was quietly opening my gift, away from the chaos of the party. Whoa, he whispered, pulling the airplane kit out of the wrapping. This is awesome, Grandma. Thank you. His eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning, and for a moment, a very small, very precious moment, I felt like I mattered again. But then Norris came over, shut the joy down like a flicked switch, and told Aiden to put the toy away until after cake. And when I spoke up to defend him, well, that's when I realized I wasn't just being ignored. I was being managed. And whatever was happening in this house, it wasn't just a birthday party. Something else was going on. And I intended to find out what. It happened so quickly. I almost didn't realize what they were doing. Mom, Merle said, grabbing my arm with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Can I borrow you for a minute? Sure, honey. What is it? It's the lawnmower in the garage. It's making a weird noise. And Norris says you're the only one who ever understood how Dad kept it running. I blinked. The lawnmower? Now? It'll only take 5 minutes, she insisted. The kids want to play Monopoly before cake anyway. You'd just be bored. I didn't want to argue, not on Aiden's birthday. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe she really did need help with the mower. So I followed her through the house, past the polished furniture and carefully curated throw pillows, through a hallway that smelled like lemon polish and carefully suppressed emotions. Norris's garage was like the rest of the house, neat, labeled, sterile. The mower stood parked against the far wall. Merle pointed to it without moving an inch closer. There it is, she said. Norris says it starts but makes this awful rattling. I leaned down, pretending to inspect it. Do you want to turn it on so I can hear? Thanks, Mom. Merle cut me off, already halfway to the door. Norris will explain later. Wait, you're leaving? Before I could step forward, the door shut. And then I heard the click. The lock. Merle? I called. Merle! Her muffled voice filtered through the door. Sorry, Mom. We just need a bit of time. We'll let you out in an hour. I promise. Are you serious? Open this door. Then came Norris's voice, calm, patronizing. Please, Mom. Don't make a scene. We just need to talk through some family things. Things you don't need to worry about. Quincy's voice chimed in next, nervous and soft. It's not personal, Mom. Just sit tight, okay? I froze. My own children, the ones I had fed, bathed, sung lullabies to, had locked me in the garage like I was a misbehaving child. I stood there, stunned, surrounded by paint cans, lawn tools, and the cold realization that they didn't see me as part of the family anymore, just a problem to manage. Then came a soft voice on the other side of the door. Grandma? Are you okay? It was Paisley, my sweet little 12-year-old granddaughter. Yes, darling, I replied, keeping my voice steady. I'm fine, just a little stuck. Paisley! Shannon's sharp voice cut through like a blade. Go inside. Footsteps scurried away. I sank into the wooden chair in the corner. The garage was dimly lit by a single bulb that buzzed softly above me. I wrapped my arms around myself, the air suddenly colder than it had been a moment ago. How had it come to this? After everything I had given them, birthday parties, packed lunches, nighttime stories, and every ounce of love I had, this was how they treated me? Like an interruption? A liability? But the tears didn't come. Not yet. Instead, something else stirred in me. Something colder, sharper. Lawrence. I looked around the garage, remembering how much time he spent in here. Tinkering, building, fixing. And then I remembered. The secret. Years ago, when Aiden was just a toddler, Lawrence had built a hidden passage between the garage and the pantry. He said it was to sneak in Christmas presents without being caught. Every child deserves a little magic, he'd said. That passage was still here. They thought they had locked me away safely out of sight, out of mind. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't just a grandmother in a dusty old garage. I was a retired teacher with a sharp memory, a secret passage and a plan. And if my children wanted to scheme behind my back, I was about to quietly step in front of them. I stood up from the chair in the garage, brushing dust off my dress. The memory of Lawrence's words echoed in my mind like a whispered clue in a mystery novel. There's always magic in the unexpected places, he used to say. I walked slowly along the garage wall, running my hand over every surface. I couldn't remember exactly where the entrance was, but I did remember the cabinet. A big wooden tool cabinet Lawrence built himself. It looked like any other piece of storage, but behind it was something they didn't know existed. I found the cabinet tucked in its old place, now covered with bicycle helmets and forgotten coats. I grabbed its edge and pulled gently. To my surprise, it slid aside easily. Lawrence always hated squeaky hinges. And there it was, a small gray door, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it. My heart raced. I reached down and found the latch. Still there, still working. The door opened with a soft creak, revealing a dark, narrow passageway barely taller than my shoulders. Lawrence had built this tunnel when Aiden was still in diapers. He wanted to sneak in on Christmas Eve and leave presents under the tree like Santa Claus. He even added a shelf in the pantry to cover the exit, a perfect illusion. I got down on my knees and crawled in, feeling the years press against me. The passage was tighter than I remembered. Maybe I had gained a few pounds. Or maybe I just wasn't 45 anymore. But I didn't stop. With every inch forward, my confusion turned into resolve. If they were going to decide my fate without me, the least I could do was listen in. At the other end of the passage, I reached the back of the pantry. I felt around and pushed gently. The small door gave way. I stepped into the dim storage room, surrounded by canned tomatoes, dusty jars, and the faint smell of cinnamon. Voices filtered in through the crack under the pantry door. "She's not a young girl anymore," Shannon was saying. "There's a chair in there," Audrey replied. "She'll be fine for an hour. We just need to talk this through without her giving us another lecture. She always turns everything into a guilt trip." Shannon snapped. Quincy's voice was quieter. "I don't know. This feels wrong." I pressed my ear to the door. My children were gathered just a few feet away, talking about me like I wasn't even real. "She forgot the oven last week," Norris added. "Mrs. KLE called me, said she smelled gas. It could have been dangerous." "That was one time," Merle said, "and she was distracted because I called her." Then came the part that made my stomach drop. "I found a retirement home," Shannon said. "Sunny Hills. It's close by, has great reviews, and she'd be with people her own age. It's safer than that old house." "And cheaper than fixing the roof," Norris muttered. "You're not seriously suggesting we just move her out?" Merle asked. "She won't agree to it willingly," Audrey said. "That's why we're talking now, to figure out how to make the decision for her." I took a step back from the door, my hands trembling. My ears were hot. My eyes burned. They weren't just talking about my safety. They were talking about removing me from my home, my life, my history. And they were doing it in whispers while I sat, locked in a garage. But I wasn't going to interrupt them. Not yet. If they wanted a private meeting, they were going to get one. Because I wasn't just eavesdropping. I was learning. I stepped quietly out of the pantry and moved through the kitchen like a shadow. I knew this house as well as they did, maybe even better. I slipped down the side hallway and stopped near the guest bathroom. From there, I could hear everything. They thought they were hiding secrets. But what they didn't know was that I had just unlocked every one of them. I moved quietly through the hallway, the shadows long and forgiving. Downstairs, my children were still talking about my future like it was a boardroom decision. Upstairs, it was quieter, safer. I needed a moment to think, a moment to just breathe. I crept up the staircase, every step a soft rebellion, and headed toward the guest rooms. That's when I heard something, the soft scratch of a pen, the quiet turn of a page. I peeked through a slightly open door. It was Paisley. My youngest granddaughter, 12 years old, sat cross-legged on the bed, writing in a sparkly pink notebook with a glitter pen. Her long dark hair was tied in a neat ponytail. She looked peaceful, like she was in her own world, far from the polished expectations of her parents. I knocked gently. She jumped and quickly shut the notebook. Her eyes widened. "Grandma, I thought you were in the garage." I put a finger to my lips. "Shh, that's our little secret." Paisley giggled. "How did you get out?" "Your grandfather was a clever man," I whispered. "He built a secret passage when your dad was just a kid." Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Like a spy tunnel?" "Exactly like that." I sat beside her on the bed, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "What were you writing?" She hesitated, holding the notebook protectively against her chest. "Just thoughts. Stuff I don't say out loud." "A diary?" She nodded shyly. "I used to keep one too," I told her. "It helped me sort out the world when it felt too big." "Can I read a little?" She looked at me for a long second. Then, to my surprise, she handed it over. "Only you. Don't tell Mom." I opened the first page. Her handwriting was careful, full of doodles in the margins. Some entries were lighthearted about school, books, her favorite television shows. But others. Today, Mom yelled at me again about my math grade. I told her I just didn't understand. But she said I was being lazy. She says I'll never make it if I don't try harder. I wish someone would just listen to me. Another page held a photo of an old oak tree. Under it, she had written, "I visited Grandma on Eunice. We baked apple pie and walked through her garden. She showed me how to take cool photos, how to find weird angles and little details no one else sees. She doesn't make me do math or ballet. She just listens. My throat tightened. I had no idea those moments. Our walks, our pies, our conversations meant so much to her. To me, it was just time together. To her, it was freedom. There was one more entry, dated yesterday. Tomorrow is Aiden's birthday. I hope Grandma comes. She's the only one who sees me. Not what I'm supposed to be, just me. I closed the notebook slowly. Paisley, I whispered, you're not silly. You're honest and brave and an artist. I saw the photos in your diary. They're incredible. She blushed. Really? I nodded. You have an eye for beauty most people never even notice. She smiled for the first time, really smiled. Grandma, is it true? They want to send you away. I didn't lie. Yes, I said. Some of them think I'd be safer living somewhere else. Do you want to go? I shook my head. I love my home. It's where I made memories. Where your dad and Uncle Quincy used to run around barefoot. Where your grandpa planted that oak tree you loved to photograph. She looked down at her notebook. It's not fair. No, sweetie. It's not. She took a deep breath. You're not leaving. I'll help you. I laughed softly. Well, I'm not going down without a fight. And in that quiet little room, surrounded by sparkles and secrets, a pact was made. 2 women, one young, one aging, both feeling invisible, but both learning they were seen, after all. As Paisley hugged me and slipped out of the room to join the others, I stood in her doorway, notebook still clutched to my chest, and looked out into the hallway. It was time. Time to turn their little family meeting into a lesson none of them would forget. I had heard enough, understood more than they ever intended for me to know, and I had no interest in storming downstairs to yell or cry or demand respect. Number I was going to teach them the same way I taught 1,000 stubborn, wide-eyed kids over the years. Not with volume, with understanding. But first, I had to get back to the garage. If they discovered I'd escaped, the plan would fall apart. I moved quickly, quietly, tiptoeing back through the hallway, down the stairs, through the kitchen, past the pantry, and back into the utility room. I slipped into the secret tunnel again, my knees groaning, my back protesting. But I didn't stop. At the end of the tunnel, I pushed open the small gray door and slid back into the garage. Everything looked just as I had left it. The chair in the corner, the dim bulb, the locked door. Perfect. I sat down and waited, breathing slowly, eyes closed, thinking. And then, the plan began to form. A lesson in compassion. One they wouldn't see coming. When the garage door finally creaked open a few minutes later, it was Shannon who entered, calling out softly, Eunice, are you still in here? I stood up slowly and smiled, feigning confusion. She froze. Oh, right. We got caught up with the cake and… It's fine, Shannon, I said gently. Where are the kids? I'd like to say happy birthday again. They're in the living room. I nodded and walked past her. She never even asked how I seemed so calm. But I wasn't just walking back into the house. I was walking straight into action. I had things to deliver. Upstairs, I moved with the stealth of someone who knew exactly how her children thought. I started in Norris and Audrey's bedroom. His desk, as always, was immaculately organized. In the top drawer, I found what I needed, a manila folder labeled Oak Hill Shopping Center Project. Inside were development plans, property lists, and there it was, my house circled in red, marked priority. So it was about money. I placed my own envelope on top of the documents, a copy of my bank statement and a handwritten note. Norris, I know about the project, and I know about your job. I'm willing to help you with a loan, on my terms. But this house is not a priority. It's my home. You want help? Be honest. Love, Mom. Next stop, Merle's room. Her notebook sat open, pages covered in expense scribbles and red underlines. I left her an envelope, too. Inside, a business card for Dorothy, my old friend who owned a gallery downtown, and a note. Merle, your work is beautiful. Dorothy wants to see it. You're stronger than your debts, but don't be too proud to ask for help. That's what family is for. Love, Mom. Finally, I crept into Quincy and Shannon's guest room. On the nightstand, Shannon's phone lay charging. Risky, but I had a mission. I opened the gallery. Photo after photo of Tanner dance, competitions, straight A certificates. Almost none of Paisley. Except one. Her face strained and awkward in ballet class. Then I found another taken by me. Paisley under the old oak, camera in hand, light dancing on her cheek. I sent both to the wireless printer in Norris's office, retrieved the photos, and left them on Quincy's pillow with a message. Which version of your daughter looks happy? She's trying to tell you who she is. Start listening. Grandma. And with that, I slipped back down the stairs, through the tunnel, into the garage. Back into the cage they thought they'd locked me in. Except now, the locks were in my hands. And class was about to begin. I returned to the garage just in time. The chair creaked softly beneath me as I sat down, brushing off a faint layer of dust and steadying my breath. From outside the door, I heard voices, laughter, music, the sound of dishes clinking. The party was in full swing again. It was as if I didn't exist. Perfect. Let them think that. Because the moment was coming. My words tucked inside those little envelopes upstairs would speak louder than anything I could shout. 5 minutes later, the garage door creaked open. It was Shannon again. "Aunt Eunice?" she called. "You still in here?" I stood slowly. Of course. Where else would I be? The door was locked. She looked flustered. "Oh, right. Norris asked me to check on you." "Is the cake finished?" I asked innocently. "Yes. Everyone's inside now." "Good. I'd like to wish Aiden another happy birthday." And just like that, I passed her in the doorway and walked calmly back into the house, a quiet storm hiding in plain sight. The kids were gathered around a board game. Aiden looked up and beamed. "Grandma, want to see the airplane? I started building it." "Of course," I smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. "But later. Right now, let's get ready for dinner." In the kitchen, Audrey was setting the table. I rolled up my sleeves and walked over. "Need a hand?" Audrey blinked. "You want to help?" "I insist." She hesitated, then passed me a bowl of salad. "You can toss this." As I worked beside her, I could feel the shift starting. Upstairs, I knew they were finding the envelopes. And soon, everything would change. First came Norris. He descended the stairs slower than usual, holding my envelope in his hand like it was made of glass. He didn't say a word. Then came Merle, her eyes red, notebook pressed to her chest. She avoided my gaze and sat silently at the table. Quincy and Shannon were last. Their faces were unreadable, but something had definitely shifted. Quincy's posture was straighter. Shannon's was softer. Dinner began in near silence. Audrey served her signature lasagna. The kids chatted about cake and games. I complimented the seasoning. Small talk, safe talk. But underneath it all, the silence between the adults was deafening. Until finally, Norris spoke. "Mom," he said, placing the envelope on the table. "We need to talk." Everyone froze. "You know?" Merle whispered. I nodded calmly. "I know everything." Norris leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "How?" "There are secret passages in this house," I said, smiling gently. "Your father was a romantic. He built them for Christmas magic. Turns out they work for more than just Santa Claus." No one spoke. "I heard what you said," I continued. "All of it. About Sunny Hills. About my house. About your fears." Quincy lowered his head. Shannon closed her eyes. And I understand, I said softly. I do. You're worried. You're busy. Life is heavy. But here's the thing. I placed my hands flat on the table. I'm not done living. I'm not done deciding. And I am not a burden. Merle wiped her eyes. Mom, I'm sorry. Quincy reached across the table. We should have talked to you. Really talked. I turned to Norris. And you. You're not a villain. You're my son. If you need help, ask. But don't sell my home behind my back and call it love. He looked broken. I didn't mean to use you, he said quietly. I just didn't know what else to do. I nodded slowly. You do now. The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was healing. Real. And for the first time in years, we weren't just a family eating dinner. We were a family listening. By the time dessert was served, something had changed. Not just the tone of the room, but the people inside it. Audrey brought in a tray of coffee and small cakes. And for once, no one rushed to check their phone. The kids returned to the table, full of giggles and frosting, and for a moment, we all just sat there, not as roles or responsibilities, but as human beings. Messy, flawed, real. Quincy was the first to break the silence. Mom, he said, his voice steadier than I'd heard in years. You were right about Paisley. Shannon glanced at him, but didn't interrupt. She showed me some of her photos, and I realized I've barely looked at her. Not really. I've been so busy making sure she has a stable future that I forgot to ask her what she actually wants. I smiled gently. She wants to be seen. Shannon spoke next. She's been hiding her camera under the bed. I never knew how much she cared about it. She looked down. I thought ballet gave her structure, gave her a chance. She already has a chance, I said kindly. She just needs your blessing to take it. Then Merle chimed in, flipping her notebook open like it was a confession. I made an appointment at the Azure Gallery, she said. Your friend Dorothy's interested in my work. I never thought I was good enough to be in a real gallery, but your note made me realize maybe I've been the one holding myself back. I reached across the table and took her hand. You've always had the spark. You just needed someone to fan the flame. Then Norris. He hadn't touched his coffee. He sat there quietly, still holding my envelope in his hands. Mom, he said, voice low, about the house and the job. You don't need to explain. I said. No, I do, he insisted. I crossed a line. I thought I was protecting you, but really I was protecting myself. I was scared and desperate, and I used you to cover it up. He paused. If you're still willing, I'd like to talk more about that loan. Not as a son cashing in, but as someone who finally knows how to ask for help. I nodded. Come by the house next week. We'll talk it over properly. When the plates were cleared and the kids returned to their games, I stood up slowly. There's one thing I'd like to ask of all of you. They looked up. Don't treat me like I'm fading. I may move slower. I may forget a name or two, but I still feel everything just as deeply. I still have thoughts, opinions, humor. I still want to laugh with you, argue with you, help you raise your children and be part of your lives. They all nodded, even Shannon. And I'll keep the house, I added, smiling, but I'll gladly take some help around the yard. Norris chuckled. We can schedule visits, rotate weekends, keep the place lively. Just bring coffee when you come. I winked. And maybe let me beat you at Scrabble once in a while. The evening wound down gently. One by one, they hugged me at the door. Quincy lingered, then whispered, I'm going to help Paisley build a photo wall in her room. Merle promised to bring her newest ceramic pieces to show me. Even Shannon offered a hug, tentative but real. And as I pulled out of the driveway in my old Ford, Aiden ran onto the porch, waving like a boy who truly saw his grandmother. I looked in the mirror as I drove away at their faces, softer now, standing in the golden porch light. They finally understood. I wasn't just a chapter from their past. I was still part of the story. And maybe, Just maybe. I still had a few lessons left to teach.